According to information obtained by TV Republika, 2 further violations of Polish airspace occurred last night. 2 unidentified objects were reportedly recorded in the vicinity of Dubica Serkiewna in Podlasia. So far, the Ministry of National Defence has not confirmed the incident, and after recent incidents in which drones from the east flew into Polish territory without any control and were found after crashing in the Lublin and Podlasia regions, more and more questions are being asked about the country's anti-drone protection. Recent events involving drones flying into Poland from the east do not inspire optimism. There are 2 methods known to the Russian Federation that are used against various countries. First, to actually test the effectiveness of our air defense system at this level below radar, because drones do test this system below radar. And the second goal is, of course, to cause some anxiety in society. The situation looks even more dangerous because it was only after the drones crashed that residents of Podlasia and Lublin found them. If we want to build this system, we will never build a system so tight that no drone, I'm not talking about missiles, I hope we will be able to stop all missiles, so that no drone can fly through. Poles have a system that they should not have, namely a system of citizen control. We spend enough money, 4 or 5% of Poland's GDP, to have advanced anti-drone systems that are operational and not stored somewhere and gathering dust. During yesterday's press conference, the Defence Ministry spokesman was asked about protecting the country from drones and about the Sky Control anti-drone system purchased during the Law and Justice government. After almost 2 years in power, all the current authorities can do in such a fundamental matter as the security of our society is to improvise, even if it is imaginative and creative. Unfortunately, on the one hand, this does not sound reassuring, and on the other, it gives the Russians a reason to be satisfied. All the more so because the system that should protect Polish airspace from the most threatened eastern side is not doing so. The dozen or so systems that were purchased by Minister Mariusz Błaszczak after the famous violation of our public space by a Belarusian helicopter are not being modernized or updated, and there is no cooperation with Polish companies because of economic patriotism. There is a system acquired during the Law and Justice government, the Sky Control system. Yesterday, the spokesman for the Ministry of National Defence stated that it is not deployed at the border. I asked why. Why was no investment made in modernizing this system? This is another very important question, and the key question is why the drones that flew into Polish airspace were not shot down.
Panie premierze, jak z tymi dronami?
We tried to ask the head of the Ministry of National Defence about the Sky Control anti-drone system, but to no avail. His colleagues from the December 13th coalition came forward with explanations. We should create a system that will detect these drones, but I don't know whether this is technologically feasible and possible, as they fly quite low from what I know. I hope that Minister Kosiniak will find a solution. Sometimes it's not about shooting down the drone immediately, but knowing its flight path and letting it crash or land in an open field, as was the case in these 2 instances. I also think there is no point in fueling the spiral of fear. We have a well-equipped and well-trained army, and it can handle this, believe me, gentlemen. This argument misses the mark because no one is investigating the flight paths of these drones. They fall and are found by local residents. These are complex systems that cannot be implemented in 6 months or a year. As the Minister of National Defence assures us, the coming months will lead to the definitive closure of these monitoring systems, including those monitoring very low-altitude flying objects. We are literally just a short time away from completing this. But that does not answer the question of why the Ministry of National Defence, which has not implemented the new system, is not using it and, as everything indicates, is not modernising the system that was implemented earlier. I assume that he had every reason to make such a decision, and I assume that, in parallel with this, work is underway to secure this matter, perhaps with newer equipment, perhaps with newer technology, a newer solution. Poland has been equipped with the Sky Control system, which allows these drones to be neutralised. Why the current Minister of National Defence does not use, update or effectively maintain this system is a question for the Minister of National Defence. The head of the Ministry of National Defence has so far boasted about signing a contract for the Barbara anti-drone aerostat system. What could be the reason for suspending the Sky Control system? I'm afraid that it was for political reasons, due to the fact that the Sky Control system and the Jestrom drone shooting system were designed and ordered during the Law and Justice era. At the moment, we have nothing at our disposal because the use of these systems has been blocked for political reasons. The whole thing also looks strange from the point of view of communication with Poles, because so far, Polish Prime Minister Tusk, who does not shy away from commenting on even less important matters, has not spoken out on this issue. That is why the opposition is proposing rapid changes that could improve the situation by using mythical European defence funds. On behalf of the Law and Justice Parliamentary Club, I demand that the money from this source be allocated to a drone factory that will produce a large number of drones that are easy to operate and low cost. Let's hope that falling drones from the east do not become part of our everyday life.
Putin is ready to attack more countries, which is why NATO's eastern flank must be prepared. This is the message from the presidents of Poland and Finland following a meeting between delegations in Helsinki. 100 American Bradley infantry fighting vehicles are on their way to Poland. According to media reports, the vast majority of the vehicles are being transferred from American military bases in Germany, and importantly, each vehicle is fully combat ready. This support is part of the rotational U.S. presence in our country, which is of key importance for Poland in the face of the growing threat from the east. Military equipment is one thing, but diplomatic rapprochement is another. President Karol Nawrocki is conducting his offensive through contacts with his closest allies. Today, Finland, which given its location on NATO's eastern flank, automatically became our strategic partner in security matters when it joined the alliance. We spoke with the president. The president is open to expanding the Bucharest 9, and I am very grateful for that. All Central European countries, the Nordic and Baltic states, feel responsible for NATO's eastern flank. We will be in the process here. The president is open to these discussions. During his meeting with his Finnish counterpart, the Polish president emphasized that the threat is real, which is why cooperation between allies, especially in this region, is crucial. Helsinki controls the Gulf of Finland, a key shipping channel for Russia across the Baltic Sea, which after Finland and Sweden joined NATO, has become almost an internal sea of the alliance. We are convinced that Vladimir Putin is ready to strike at other countries as well, which is why we are developing our armed forces, our partnerships, our allied relations, and building the responsibility of our countries in the face of changes in the security architecture in Central Europe, Northern Europe, and the Nordic and Baltic states. This, of course, also affects Poland. The Finnish president devoted a large part of the talks to the issue of Ukraine. The so-called coalition of the willing, which includes Helsinki, is preparing to send troops to the east, but only if a truce is signed between Kiev and Moscow. At the same time, however, he warned against a possible strategic mistake by NATO.
Our shared view is that it is important to strengthen NATO's deterrence and defense against Russia as a long-term threat. A possible peace or ceasefire in Ukraine does not mean we can let our guard down.
All the more so because, as analysts maintain, Russia could pose a real threat to NATO's eastern flank. Former senior British military intelligence officer Philip Ingram recently stated that Putin could strike directly at the Achilles heel of our region, namely the Suwałki Gap.
To understand the threat to the Baltics, we need to look at the Russian hybrid warfare playbook. Intelligence experts call them indicators and warnings, the breadcrumbs that reveal an enemy's intentions. Russia's playbook for the Baltics is unlikely to be a simple head-on assault. They're masters of hybrid warfare. They've already started.
The situation around the Suwałki Gap was the subject of talks between the presidents of Poland and Lithuania during Karol Nawrocki's visit to Vilnius yesterday. It is clear that both countries, with American support, must prepare for possible provocations from Moscow. One of these could be the Russian-Belarusian military maneuvers near the Suwałki Gap, which are set to begin this weekend. In response to the aggressive moves by Minsk and Moscow, the Polish government has decided to close its borders with Belarus. However, according to some commentators, the Polish government has a credibility problem in the context of security, considering that some of the Polish counterintelligence service officials are the same people who over a decade ago met with Russia's Federal Security Service representatives at boozy parties as part of the so-called reset policy, including at the Russian Navy's Baltic base.
Inaczej ta sytuacja wyglądała.
The situation was different during the reset, when people who are now jointly responsible for security have partied with representatives of Russia's Federal Security Service, took joint helicopter flights, and signed a shameful agreement with the Russian Special Services.
Specjalną.
This is dangerous because the Kremlin may try to use every opportunity and every possible contact for diversionary and hybrid activities.
United States President Donald Trump has reacted strongly to the brutal murder of a Ukrainian woman on a train in Charlotte, North Carolina. The perpetrator turned out to be a black man, a repeat offender who, despite an extremely long police record and 14 arrests, remained at large. US President Donald Trump watched footage of the murder of a 23-year-old Ukrainian woman by a black repeat offender. What the hell was he doing riding the train and walking the streets? Criminals like this need to be locked up. The blood of this innocent woman can literally be seen dripping from the killer's knife, and now her blood is on the hands of the Democrats who refuse to put bad people in jail. Almost immediately, one of the largest news agencies, Reuters, also published a video of the murder. However, the negative protagonist of this report, apart from the murderer, was also Donald Trump. Donald Trump condemned the fatal stabbing of a Ukrainian woman aboard a North Carolina train as the US president and his allies sought to use the murder to justify plans to expand his crime crackdown in Democratic-led cities. However, before President Donald Trump posted about the murder on his social media profile, Reuters, like most left-wing liberal media outlets, remained silent on the matter.
Nie widzą rzeczywistości, która...
They don't see the reality, such as this brutal murder, which is striking simply because it doesn't fit the picture they are used to. And as long as there is no reason for the media to pretend they don't see it, then they proceed to twist reality. This brutal murder is appalling, and in a moment it will become a pretext for falsely portraying the conservative president of the United States. Donald Trump has been the target of attacks by the major media since the beginning of his political career. He has been accused of economic, criminal, and even sexual crimes, among other things, which turned out to be lies. However, all boundaries have been crossed in recent weeks. The American media has unanimously suggested that the President of the United States is dead. During the last period of Donald Trump's presidency and earlier during the election campaign, we saw this massive attack by the media, which is still continuing. They are using every situation to remind us that Donald Trump is a politician who wants to take away Americans' values, who wants to take away their freedom, while Donald Trump is doing everything he can to restore that freedom. Because freedom also means the right to safety on the streets. Meanwhile, as soon as Donald Trump sent the National Guard to the streets of American cities ravaged by crime, to restore order and safety, the media accused him of trying to start a civil war.
Well, why would you use the Department of Defense?
Listen, be quiet. Listen. You don't listen. You never listen. That's why you're second rate. We're not going to war. We're going to clean up our cities. We're going to clean them up so they don't kill 5 people every weekend. That's not war. That's common sense.
Excuse me. You know how many people were killed in Chicago last weekend? 8. You know how many people were killed in Chicago the week before? 7. You know how many people were wounded? 74 people were wounded. You think there's worse than that? I don't think so.
Donald Trump has ordered similar actions in Washington, D.C. and Boston.
We're out here doing our operation with our surge, and mainly because to catch the criminal alien population, that sanctuary city policies attract these criminal aliens. We want to get them out of the city, make the public safe, help with national security, and to make sure that everybody in this community is safe, no matter what they feel or how their political views. We're here to make everybody safe.
However, American television stations and news agencies are taking the side of immigrants and promoting a narrative, also known in Poland, about poor people looking for their place in the world. At the same time, pro-immigration protests are being inspired, and activists sabotaging the actions of the authorities are the heroes of left-wing liberal media propaganda.
We're trying to create a listing of all the types of vehicles they're using. License plates, license plate numbers, description of, again, make, model, directions they're going, right? Where they came off of, where they headed. And we're trying to document it. And because they do the same to us, right? They come and surveil us. So this is our people version of our humble surveillance.
The deportation of illegal immigrants and the restoration of public order were among Donald Trump's main demands during his presidential campaign. Even then, these announcements were hated by the Democrats and, of course, by the media that supported them. People expect security for themselves and their families, as well as politicians who will look after the interests of voters and not succumb to the media hysteria of self-proclaimed elites who are detached from reality. This is true in the United States as well as in Poland.
U.S. President Donald Trump begins playing hardball with Russian criminal Vladimir Putin and resorts to heavy-caliber arguments, the kind that the Kremlin certainly fears.
Are you ready to move to the second phase of sanctions against Russia or punishing?
The Russian war machine will receive a much stronger blow than on the front lines because the U.S. will hit the Kremlin's economy. The sanctions will not only affect Moscow, but also everyone who still trades with Russia will pay dearly. This applies, for example, to India, which buys Russian raw materials, but also to other countries that indirectly finance Russian crimes.
The trade team and the president are disappointed that India continues to fund Russia's Ukraine war, and hopefully it's a diplomatic issue that will have positive developments soon.
First and foremost for criminal Russia, whose economy is currently focused primarily on waging war in Ukraine. If Donald Trump's declarations are actually followed by sanctions that will hit the Russian economy very hard or even harder, this may be a very important argument for actually initiating peace talks. Donald Trump is to personally inform Vladimir Putin during a telephone conversation of the consequences he will face for blocking the peace talks with Kyiv, declared during the meeting in Alaska. The American leader also announced that despite the military and diplomatic weakness of the mainly left-wing liberal leaders of Western Europe, he will be talking to them later this week at the White House about a new, firm strategy in relations with the Kremlin. What Donald Trump has now done, namely switching, if that is the case, to this new tactic of harsh sanctions, I think will bring the Russians closer to negotiations. The tough stance towards Putin proposed by Donald Trump is in Poland's national interest. Kremlin criminals only understand the language of force, which is why the Republican intends to talk to him in this way from now on.